It happened 3 years ago, but I still sleep with my bedroom door locked every night. I live alone now, but back then I had just moved into a small rental house on the edge of town. It wasn't anything special, just a quiet little place surrounded by trees and empty fields. The kind of place where you hear every sound at night. The landlord told me the house had been empty for almost a year before I moved in. At the time, that didn't bother me. Now, I wish it had. The first few weeks were normal. Work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. But one night, something small happened. Something I ignored. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to a faint creaking noise. At first, I thought it was the house settling. Old houses make sounds all the time. But then I heard it again. Creak. It sounded like a door slowly opening. I sat up in bed and looked toward my bedroom door. It was still closed. My heart was beating a little faster now. I listened carefully. Nothing. The house was completely silent. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just the wind and went back to sleep. The next morning, everything seemed normal. But when I walked into the hallway, I noticed something strange. The closet door at the end of the hall was open, just a few inches. I was almost certain I had closed it the night before. But again, I brushed it off. Maybe I forgot. That night, the noise came back. This time, it was louder. Creak, creak. It sounded exactly like a door hinge slowly moving. I checked the time. 2:27 a.m. The sound was coming from the hallway. I got out of bed and opened my door. The hallway was dark, but I could see the closet door again, slowly moving, opening, just a little more. I stood there, staring at it. My brain tried to explain it. Maybe the house was uneven. Maybe air pressure moved it. I walked down the hallway and pushed the closet door shut. It clicked into place. Then I went back to bed. The next day, I actually tested it. I pushed the closet door open, then closed it again. It stayed shut. The hinge felt tight. No reason it should move by itself. But that night, 2:31 a.m. Creak. I didn't even get out of bed this time. I just stared at my bedroom door, waiting, listening. The sound came again. Creak. Then it stopped. After a few minutes, I forced myself to get up. I walked into the hallway, and my stomach dropped. The closet door was open again, wider this time, almost halfway. I remember standing there feeling a strange chill run down my spine. Something about it didn't feel right. But again, I shut the door and went back to bed. The next morning, I decided to fix it. I tightened the hinge screws with a screwdriver. Now it was even harder to move. Problem solved. Or so I thought. That night, I stayed up late watching movies. Around 1:45 a.m., I finally turned off the TV and went to bed. I must have fallen asleep quickly, because the next thing I remember was waking up suddenly. No noise, no creaking, just a feeling, like someone was watching me. I looked at the clock, 2:29 a.m. Then I heard something, not the closet door, footsteps, very soft, somewhere in the house. I froze. The footsteps stopped. Then came the creaking sound again. Creak. My heart started pounding, but this time the sound was closer, much closer, right outside my bedroom door. I slowly sat up in bed and stared at the door. Silence. Then, a faint shadow moved under the door, like someone walking past it. I felt my entire body go cold. Someone was inside my house. I grabbed my phone and quietly dialed 911. I whispered to the operator that someone might be inside. They told me to stay in my room and lock the door. So I did. Then I waited and listened. For several minutes, there was nothing. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Moving down the hallway. Toward the closet. Creak. The door opened again. But this time, it didn't stop. It kept opening until it slammed against the wall. The sound echoed through the house. Then silence. 5 minutes later, the police arrived. I heard them enter the house and start searching. Eventually, one of the officers knocked on my bedroom door. I unlocked it. He asked me to come look at something. We walked to the hallway, and that's when I saw it. The closet door was wide open. Inside the closet were muddy footprints, but the weird part wasn't the footprints. It was what they led to. At the back of the closet wall was a small wooden panel, something I had never noticed before. The officers pulled it open. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, just big enough for a person to crawl through. The flashlight beam disappeared into darkness. Then the officer said something I'll never forget. "There are blankets down here." My stomach twisted. They pulled them out. Old food wrappers, empty water bottles. Someone had been living inside the walls of my house for who knows how long, watching, waiting, listening. The police searched the crawl space, but whoever it was had already escaped. But they did find something else, a small notebook. Inside were dates and times. Almost every entry said the same thing, 2:30, closet. And at the bottom of the last page were 3 words written in messy handwriting. "Tonight, I'll try." I moved out the next day. The house was later renovated and the crawl space was sealed. But sometimes I still think about it. Every time I hear a door creak at night, and I wonder how many nights that person was standing just feet away from my bedroom door, watching me sleep. If you've ever lived in an old house, you know they make noises. Pipes knock, floorboards creak, the wind rattles things that shouldn't rattle. Most of the time, those sounds have perfectly normal explanations, but sometimes they don't. 3 years ago, I rented a small 2-story house just outside town. It was older, built sometime in the 1940s, but it was cheap and quiet, which was exactly what I wanted. The house had a small kitchen, a living room, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. And above the second floor, there was an attic. The attic access was in the hallway ceiling, one of those square wooden panels with a little metal ring you pull down so the ladder folds out. When I first moved in, I climbed up there once just to look around. It was dusty, cramped, and filled with old insulation and wooden beams. Nothing unusual, just an empty attic. I remember thinking it was the perfect place to store boxes later, but I never ended up using it. The first strange thing happened about 2 weeks after I moved in. It was late, around 1 a.m. I was sitting on the couch downstairs watching TV when I heard a faint noise from above me. Thump. I muted the TV. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard it again. Thump, thump, scrape. It sounded heavier now, not like a small animal, more like something dragging. I turned off the TV again and listened carefully. Another scrape, directly above the living room. My stomach twisted a little. Still, animals seem like the only logical explanation. The next day, I called my landlord and told him something might be living in the attic. He said he'd send someone to check it out later that week. But that night, the noises came back again. Except this time, they were different. Instead of random thumps, I heard something that sounded disturbingly deliberate. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Walking. Back and forth. Directly above my ceiling. Step. 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 I froze on the couch. Animals don't walk like that. My heart started beating faster. Step. Step. The footsteps moved across the attic, then stopped, right above where I was sitting. I stared at the ceiling, holding my breath. For nearly 30 seconds, there was silence. Then, 3 slow knocks directly above my head. Knock, knock, knock. I grabbed my keys and left the house. I drove around for almost an hour before I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe it really was an animal. Maybe I imagined the pattern. When I got back, the house was silent. I slept with my bedroom door locked that night. The next afternoon, the landlord sent a handyman over to inspect the attic. I stood in the hallway while he pulled down the ladder and climbed up, thus drifted down as he moved around. After a few minutes, he poked his head down. "Looks empty," he said. "No animals?" "Not that I can see." He climbed down and closed the hatch. Old houses make weird sounds. Nothing to worry about. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't, because the noises got worse. 2 nights later, I woke up suddenly at around 2 a.m. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it. Walking. Directly above my bedroom. Step. 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 I sat up in bed, listening. The footsteps paced slowly across the attic, then stopped, then started again. Back and forth, back and forth. It went on for almost 5 minutes. Finally, I worked up the courage to get out of bed. I stepped into the hallway and looked up at the attic hatch. The metal ring dangled slightly, like it had just been moved. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I was absolutely certain I hadn't opened it since the handyman left, and yet the hatch wasn't completely closed anymore. It was hanging open about an inch. I grabbed a chair from the kitchen and placed it under the hatch. My hands were shaking as I climbed up. I reached up slowly and pushed the panel open. Darkness. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through dust and wooden beams. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed something strange. In the insulation, there were paths, compressed areas like something had been walking back and forth up there. My throat tightened. Then my light landed on something else, near the far wall of the attic. A pile of blankets. My heart started pounding. I scrambled back down the ladder and called the police immediately. 2 officers arrived about 20 minutes later. They searched the attic carefully, but whoever had been living there was gone. Apparently, the attic had a loose vent panel that someone could open from outside. That's probably how they got in and out. The landlord sealed the vent and reinforced the attic hatch, but the damage was already done. For weeks after that, I couldn't sleep. Every creak made my heart race. Every sound above me made me panic. Eventually, I moved out. But a few months later, something happened that still makes my skin crawl. I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of me, sleeping, taken from above, from the attic hole. On the back of the photograph were 6 handwritten words. "I liked watching you sleep." Most people grow out of the fear of something hiding under their bed. When you're a kid, it feels real. You imagine monsters waiting in the dark, just inches below where you sleep. But as you get older, you learn that monsters aren't real. Or at least, that's what I used to think. This happened when I was 22. I had just moved into my first apartment alone. It was a small place on the 3rd floor of an older building near the edge of town. The rent was cheap, and the landlord didn't ask many questions. The apartment itself was simple. A small kitchen, a living room, 1 bathroom, and a bedroom just big enough for a bed, a dresser, and a nightstand. Nothing fancy, but it felt good having my own place. The first few weeks were completely normal. Work during the day, come home, cook something quick, watch TV, and go to bed. Quiet. Peaceful. Until the first strange thing happened. It was a Thursday night. I remember because I had work early the next morning. Around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. At first, I thought I had just had a bad dream. But then I realized something had actually woken me up. A sound. A very small sound. A faint scraping noise. I lay still in the darkness, listening. Scrape. Scrape. It sounded like something lightly dragging across the floor. My heart started beating a little faster. The sound was coming from somewhere in the bedroom, but the room was pitch black. I slowly reached over and turned on the lamp on my nightstand. The light filled the room instantly, and the sound stopped. I sat up and looked around. Nothing looked out of place. The closet door was closed, the window was shut, the bedroom door was locked,
Everything seemed normal. Eventually, I convinced myself I had imagined it. Maybe it was a neighbor in the apartment below me. Maybe it was pipes in the building. So I turned the lamp off and went back to sleep. But the next night, it happened again. This time, I woke up to something different. A thump. Very soft, but very close. I opened my eyes slowly. The room was dark again. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard it. Breathing. Very quiet, but definitely breathing. And it wasn't coming from me. It was coming from below, from underneath the bed. My entire body went rigid. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it was air moving through the vents. But deep down, I knew what it sounded like. Someone was breathing under my bed. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just lay there, staring into the darkness. The breathing continued. Slow. Calm. Like someone lying comfortably, right beneath me. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to jump out of bed and run, but I was too terrified to move. Minutes passed. Eventually, the breathing stopped. Completely. The silence was almost worse. I stayed awake until sunrise. The next morning, I checked under the bed. Nothing. Just a few storage boxes and dust. I felt stupid for being scared. But that night, I pushed the boxes further under the bed so there will be less empty space. I figured that would make me feel better. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Then Sunday night came, and things got worse. I woke up again around 2:15 a.m., but this time, I knew immediately that something was wrong, because the mattress had moved. Just slightly, like someone had pushed it from below. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. Then I heard it again. Breathing. Right under me. But this time it was louder, closer. And then, a whisper. So quiet, I almost thought I imagined it. Hello. I bolted out of bed so fast I nearly fell. I ran into the living room and turned on every light in the apartment. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called the police. They arrived about 15 minutes later. 2 officers searched the entire apartment carefully. Closet, bathroom, kitchen, then the bedroom. One of the officers knelt down and looked under the bed with a flashlight. After a moment, he stood up. There's no one here. I felt both relieved and embarrassed. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe stress was getting to me. The officers left, and eventually I forced myself to go back to sleep. But something still felt wrong. The next day, I decided to do something simple. I bought a cheap security camera, just in case. That night, I placed the camera on my dresser, so I pointed directly at the bed. Then I went to sleep. The next morning, the first thing I did was check the footage. At first, everything looked normal, just me sleeping. Hours passed on the recording with nothing happening. Then, around 2:14 a.m., the mattress moved. Just slightly, like the mattress had shifted. My stomach tightened. A few seconds later, something else happened. The blanket lifted from underneath. Slowly, very slowly. And then I saw it. A hand. A pale hand sliding out from under the bed. My heart stopped. The hand rested on the mattress for a few seconds. Then another hand appeared. Then, a face. A man slowly crawled out from under my bed. He was thin, dirty. His hair was long and tangled. He stood beside my bed and stared at me while I slept, just watching, for almost 10 minutes. My skin crawled as I watched the footage. Eventually, the man crouched down again and slid back under the bed, like a shadow disappearing. I called the police immediately. This time, they arrived faster. When they searched under the bed again, they discovered something none of us had noticed before. The wooden panel beneath the bed frame had been removed. Underneath was a maintenance crawlspace between the apartment floors, just large enough for someone to hide inside. The officers opened it and shined their lights inside. And there he was, curled up in the darkness. The man didn't even try to run. He just stared up at them, smiling. They dragged him out and arrested him on the spot. Later, I learned he'd been living inside the maintenance crawlspace of the building for months, moving between apartments through maintenance panels. The police asked him why he chose my apartment. Their answer still haunts me. He said it was because I slept deeply, because I never woke up, and because there was enough room under the bed. I moved out that week. But sometimes, late at night, I still wake up suddenly, and for a split second, I swear I can hear breathing beneath the mattress.
If you enjoyed these true horror stories and want to hear more chilling experiences like this, make sure you hit the like button so more people can discover these stories. Let me know in the comments which story scared you the most, and if you've ever had a moment where you felt like someone was in your house. And if you love true scary stories, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next terrifying upload. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next story.